Okay, thank you, Chairman. We're now live streaming. I'll hand the meeting over to yourself.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Cabinet meeting on Monday morning. Hope that you're all well. We'll go through the items of business just while my IT kicks into gear. Just bear with me. Always the way, isn't it? Technology. Good, super. We're back online. So let's go through item 1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday, the 7th of September, contain pages 4 to 13. Do Cabinet colleagues feel that they're a true and accurate record and happy to move the minutes? Swiping across. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Item 2, apologies for absence, Julie or Teresa.
Chairman, I have no apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillors Hewitt and Cowan.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll move on to item 3, which is urgent business. Urgent business for me is that I'll be withdrawing item 8, which is the planning register and general data protection regulations. I'm removing this item till another date. I just want to check to make sure that as a district council, we're being as transparent as we can with both applicants, residents and our wider community, and ensuring that there's some uniformity across other councils in Norfolk, which at the moment for me, the paper just doesn't quite articulate and confirm that position. So we'll be deferring that item to another date. No other urgent business. We'll move on to item 4, declarations of interest from any colleagues in the room. No, I'm seeing shaking of heads. We'll move on to item 5, non-members wishing to address. Welcome to all of you who are here today. I think it may be a semi-short meeting with item 8 being withdrawn, but you are most welcome here today. And item 6, Chairman's announcements. The only announcement I've got for colleagues across the Cabinet and the Council today is just to confirm the position on LGR and devolution. So this was the devolution and recovery white paper for which it was being branded from Whitehall. Just to confirm that 3 Shire counties across the country have been written to by the Secretary of State, Right Honourable Robert Jenrick, inviting them to progress and move forward with a proposal. They are Cumbria, North Yorkshire and Somerset. Any other councils across the country who submitted a formal request, they have been acknowledged and they have been given explanation as to why they aren't progressing. In relation to the wider devolution recovery white paper, from what it was first touted to be from many seminars and conferences which local government leaders and chief executives attended across the summer, I understand it's now metamorphosizing somewhat and will look at a little bit differently to what it was first proposed. So we're expecting that to land at the latter part of this calendar year or into early next year. And of course, as agreed, all councils across Norfolk will respond to that, to whatever that looks like. But I think it'll be a very different package and very much focused on local councils finding an appropriate local solution which fits them best, rather than what could be possibly perceived as a top-down exercise. So it's encouraging. Government has heard the concerns across the wider local government family, and we shall wait to see what further action we may or may not be needed to take. So we'll move on to item 7, standard item Breckland community funding. Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. At this particular meeting, we do not have any applications coming forward, but I'm pleased to say since we reopened our match funding grant scheme, we currently have 7 applications at various stages in the process. So I'm confident that by the close of the year, we will see applications coming forward.
Great, thanks, Mark. And I would implore all colleagues across the chamber to communicate our match funding scheme to their communities, any groups which they come into contact with. We're one of the few councils who is still able to offer some sort of financial grants. I think it's a really positive position. I know that there are many groups across the district who may be struggling in the face of COVID. And if they make an application, they may or may not be successful. If they're successful, fantastic. If they're not successful, however, it started a conversation with the relevant officers to see what other funding there may be available. So I would always encourage everybody across Breckland to make an application. And if you're not successful, then at least it can start a conversation to see what support there may be available, not just within Breckland, but wider Norfolk and across the country nationally. So item 8, as I mentioned, has been deferred. So we'll move on to item 9, which is an update on the Breckland Sustainable Strategy. Councillor Sherwood, please.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you very much for inviting me to present this item. A paper was sent out, a report giving details in relation to where we are and the progress is made. I would, if I may, Chairman, like to raise and pull out some of the salient points of the report. I think, as everybody is aware, back in September 19, we were one of the first councils, I think, in Norfolk to declare a climate emergency, and a year has passed. And like many of you, I'm frustrated that we haven't made the progress on the timeline we originally set. We all know the reasons for this, the pandemic, of course, but since June, we've been working extremely hard at getting that schedule back on to where it needs to be. At the end of the report, you'll see we've set some firm dates in the schedule so we know exactly when we're going to achieve what we're aiming to achieve. But under section 1.3, you'll see what we already have done. So we've switched tariffs to a green tariff. We've appointed an organisation to do our carbon audit for us. We had a small budget set aside to enable myself and the officers to work on the strategy. We are now advertising for a fixed-term environment and climate change officer. We've been working with the University of East Anglia with their internship programme, and we've had very good help and support there. We've also been working with other councils across Norfolk, so it's a joined-up approach. Also, Breckland Training Services have developed a training package around carbon literacy, and this will be rolled out in the coming weeks. You will also have seen the announcement that all elected members will be invited to a members' forum on the 9th of November, which will set out the proposed themes of the Breckland Sustainability Strategy and set out a proposed programme of work. The purpose of this session is to invite feedback from all members so that we hear your ideas and this programme is shaped by your input. The draft strategy will then go to overview and scrutiny on the 3rd of December, and subject to the feedback from overview and scrutiny, the final sign-off will be at Council on the 21st of January. So yes, we are a little bit behind where we would have wanted to be. Nobody could have foreseen the pandemic, but I'm pleased with the steps we've begun to take, and this council is shaping, and I'm looking forward to our strategy being signed off in January 2021. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Lovely, thanks, Ian. Questions? I've got Councillor Attewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that update, Ian. Could you just confirm, I see that we've switched to a green energy supplier, and that looks like that's going to save on our carbon output, but has it saved us any money, or is it more expensive in terms of the tariff? Thank you.
Hi, Roger. It is slightly more expensive from memory. I don't think Greg Pearson is on the call with us today. Greg would have the final details, but from memory, Roger, it is slightly more expensive. I could quote you figures and be wrong, So if I may, I will gladly give you all that information. In terms of the actual cost from memory, so I'm now going to start quoting figures that could be completely wrong. I think it was about...
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Sherwood, but I can see that Greg Pearson is actually on the call. So if
Thank you. Would you mind, Councillor Atwell, if I ask Greg, because I'm sure he'll have the figures at his fingertips. Greg, if I may.
Not a problem. So our energy provider has said that it will be at a cost of 0.05 pence per kilowatt hour, in addition to what we already pay. On the usage that we've had in previous years, this would equate to a sum of between £800 to £1,500. Now, obviously, our usage figures will be significantly different this year because we haven't been in our buildings as much. So that may well end up being less than what we paid in previous years, but that will be because our usage is less, if that makes sense.
And could I ask, Greg, so people get that into perspective, so we're talking about between £800 and £1,500 on a total energy bill, which is somewhere in the region of?
At least 100,000.
So I think you'll agree, or I hope you may agree, Councillor Atwell, that changing to a green tariff is the right thing to do. And even though there is that small increase of between £800 and £1,500, I'm glad I got Greg to come in, because my memory was that it was higher than that. That is a price we are prepared to pay. I hope you'll agree that that's a sum that's acceptable.
Thanks, Ian. Roger, did you have a follow-up question at all?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Ian, I can confirm that I completely agree with that. That's the right way to go. To go hand in hand with that, though, do you agree that there needs to be some kind of strategy where we are looking to introduce more energy efficiency measures in our buildings? So I'm presuming LED lighting for a start, that type of thing at Elizabeth House, Breck House, where we could probably minimise that increase and actually probably make savings in the long run.
I do, Roger. I think all departments, what Greg has done initially is he's engaged with all the different departments across the council and looked at what we do and to make sure that they consider environmental issues. And once our sustainability policy is in place and councillors such as yourself have had the opportunity to have an input into that, those kind of things will be embedded, I hope, in our strategy going forward. You'll remember there's 3 themes. One of those themes is what we can do as an organisation ourselves to make sure that we're championing change and making sure we're doing the right thing. So I do agree with you. I think it will have to be costed out, because you've already raised the issue there that sometimes going green costs a little bit more, and it might be a phased. This is all off the top of my head. It's not decided. It could be a phased approach where we could look at as bulbs and things need change and we go over to better models rather than do it en bloc, which would probably be a quicker way to achieve. But once we get the carbon audit report, that will identify exactly where we are, and those kind of things and those kind of changes, I hope, will be part of that report and highlight what we can do and how we choose to do it and the speed we choose to do it, which I think is also incredibly important, because what we will be asking the council to agree is a carbon neutral date, what date we're going to aim for. And I'm getting older, and I'd like to be around to be invited back to the council perhaps on the day we're carbon neutral. And if they set it too far ahead, that might be a bit ambitious.
Lovely, thanks. Greg, did you have anything you wanted to come back on there at all?
I think Ian's just covered it, but I was going to add that obviously we are undertaking a carbon audit at the minute, and that will give us some clear definitions on where and what would make the best impact in terms of reducing our residual carbon that we have at the minute. I think to add to Ian's point around the additional cost, obviously we will look at how we encompass some of that, but there are a number of organizations, one that jumps to my mind at the minute called Scalix, which will lend you money to replace things like your lighting, your heating, etc. And then they will take that cost back from the saving that you make. So you don't actually pay anything out, you pay it back in your saving over 7 years. And then at the point of those 7 years, you then reduce your budget. So we will be exploring all those type of mechanisms as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Greg. I've got Councillor Wickerson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ian, for your report. And we're all delighted, obviously, to hear that things are now understandably delayed, but now beginning to move forward. I just have a couple of questions with regards to item 13C, the £24,000 that's been put aside, so to speak, for commissioning work to help gather the evidence base. Couple of questions really. Can you tell me how much of that £24,000 is going to Eunomia? In other words, what's left after we've paid for the carbon audit? And secondly, the time frame. It would be very useful, obviously, if that particular carbon audit report was available by the 9th of November, when we are invited to the forum to discuss how we can progress our carbon neutral desires, let's put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wickerson. I am rather pleased I've got my money man with me this morning, Greg. Greg, are you able to confirm those figures for me, please?
Yeah.
Again, I've got a figure in my mind, but I hate giving out the wrong information.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. So to confirm, Eunomia is costing us £10,000. So that will leave us with 14 in the pot. In terms of the timescales, they will be delivering a final product with suggested high-level emissions reduction strategy on the 30th of November. So unfortunately, while that won't be ready for the session on the 9th, it will still be ready for the session with overview and scrutiny at the beginning of December. And we would welcome kind of challenge as part of that process as well, if that answers your question, Councillor Wickerson.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes, thank you very much, Greg. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thanks. I've got Councillor Dowling, please.
Thank you, Chair. One of my points has already been answered about how much of the budget has already been spent. I'd like to thank Greg Pearson for his very clear report. One query I have is the fixed term Environment Climate Change Officer that's going to be created. How long is that fixed term likely to be?
Thank you, Councillor. It's either initially 2 or 3 years. Both figures were discussed. Greg, did we get 2 or 3 on that, please?
We will be going for an initial 2 to start with, and then as part of the programme we bring forward in January, we may look to review that.
Does that answer your question there, Councillor Dowling?
Yes, thank you. I just wondered if there was a chance it could be extended if that was felt to be necessary.
That's always a possibility. And what I would say is I really enjoy giving these reports to Cabinet, and I know everybody's enthusiastic about it because it seems to get a lot of questions and a lot of input. So yes, I would agree with you. There's always an opportunity to extend those kinds of contracts, but as initial focus, I think, because what I've lacked, Greg has been absolutely brilliant, but Greg, I don't have all Greg's time. I could take all Greg's time, and I think sometimes he probably thinks I do, or I try to take all of Greg's time. But to have that person in place to really push the programme once it's agreed is incredibly important. And it was one of the key features that I was really keen to see, that the council would make that commitment. And I'm really glad the council have supported that, and we're going forward with that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks. And just on the back of that question, Ian and Greg, do we know, obviously the application advert is open at the moment. Have we had much interest in relation to that?
I haven't checked in all honesty, Chair, but I can certainly do that and come back to the committee.
Good. I hope we've got hundreds of applications, and I hope it's a real difficult job for you and the team, Greg, to try and filter that down. It's a really exciting opportunity which Breckland is embarking on. Councillor Borwick, please.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the points I was going to raise, I was going to direct Councillor Attewell to the audit on item 13B on page 19, which is looking at the way that we're going to identify the savings. And one of the points that he made was the halogen lights or LED lights and things like that. But the main point I wanted to, and that's being done. So the main point is I just wanted to support the decision to move over to the new electricity tariff, though even though it's about 1.5% more expensive to the council, that it is going to save an estimated 357.5 tonnes of CO2 emissions per year, which is a substantial figure. And I absolutely think that the cabinet member has made the right decision to do this, given the scale of the saving. And I do understand it's a cost pressure. I know that cost is an issue in everything that the council does, but I do think this is absolutely the right thing. And like other members, I really look forward to the report of from Eunomia coming at the end of November to help shape the decisions that we need, the other decisions that we need to make on the back of this. I really do appreciate that the council's had a lot of other things to do, and I absolutely think they've done the right thing in terms of supporting people through the pandemic. But it is nice to see that we've got to the situation where we can get on with some of these other projects at the same time. So I just really wanted to endorse the decisions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Good. All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Ian at all? No. The only other Peter, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's just a comment really that what's happening with what Ian's just given us a great report and on the building. We all can do this ourselves. I'm actually doing an audit now for the same reasons with the Narborough Community Centre, as we have a reasonably big building. So we can all do this, and there is the audit companies out there will do this for free. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Peter. And the final bit of good news I've got for you, Ian, and I think it is good news, is as you're aware, Norfolk, from an officer perspective, has the Norfolk Climate and Environmental Working Group. Following the meeting, myself and Max and O'Mahony attended either last week or the week before. They're all merged into one at the moment, Ian, sorry. Through the Working Better Together programme of all Norfolk councils and including the county council, it's been agreed that one of the work streams will be to establish a political oversight board for climate and environment for Norfolk. I know this is something you have asked me to try and nudge along, and I know that hasn't always been the easiest place for us to get it to, but I'm pleased that Norfolk will have a political oversight board to hope to give some strategic oversight and direction to some of the real challenges but real opportunities we face within the county.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm delighted to that, and it's a bit like Christmas. You've saved that to the end for me. Yes, I just felt it's tremendously important that we have officer input, and all the officers from the different councils have their input at a meeting. But I did also want an opportunity for the councillors to have an input to that. So that's great news. Thank you very much.
And Max will be picking that up, working with the lead officer within Norfolk to make sure that gets established PDQ. So good news. Okay, thanks for all those questions, Ian. Thanks for the update report. Are members content to note the report contained from pages 19? Super, thank you. Move on to item 10, which is the ARP notes, so the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of September. These are just for Cabinet to note. However, I just want to draw to colleagues' attention within the report as I race through at record-breaking speed. The position in relation to support to COVID, I think ARP across the partnership has done a incredibly important and good job in supporting both residents through benefits and housing benefits to businesses as well. And it's been an immensely challenging time for the whole of that workforce. Some immensely difficult conversations they've had with residents and businesses alike who have been immensely scared through the pandemic, but through their positive, proactive intervention and through the financial support we've been able to offer, I'm pleased that we've got some really positive outcomes from that. The work of ARP hasn't stopped. You'll know that the isolation grant for those individuals who are tested positive for COVID and entitled to that, that's gone live across the country, and ARP are once again processing that system as well. And I think it just goes to show that working in partnership gives you resilience and extra capacity, and ARP has demonstrated that in abundance throughout the pandemic. So I just want to thank ARP formally through the minutes of this meeting, but just ask that members note that the minutes on agenda item 10. Okay, that concludes the formal business. Item 11 then is the next meeting will be held on Monday the 30th of November 2020. Thanks everyone for joining us today.